to sobriety. Chad shares candid insights about his upbringing, his passion for skateboarding, and how he gradually fell into the damaging cycle of alcohol. Despite facing challenges like dropping out of school and multiple DWIs, Chad turned his life around, finding sobriety and embarking on an ambitious project such as skating across all 50 states in 50 days, ultimately setting a Guinness World Record by skateboarding across the United States. And this is Chad's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. So happy you're here to check out Chad's story. Look, I did the announcement here on the podcast over the last week about the new Sober Motivation community, and let me tell you, things are off to an incredible start. We have over 100 founding members. We had our meetings this week, and let me tell you, it went quick. Ton of people plugging in. The community chat is just on fire. So many people just supporting each other. We've got people starting out to many years to many years, all coming together to help each other feel less alone, more connected, and get another day sober. That's the ultimate mission with the Sober Motivation community, and I would love to have you. The great news is I'm keeping things open for anybody to join us as a founding member until Monday. So if you want to get connected, join some virtual meetings, be plugged in with other people that are on the journey. Be part of an incredible community that lifts each other up at every turn. This is your official invite to click the link down below this episode or send me a message over on Instagram. I'll send you over the link, and I hope to see you in a meeting soon. I've taken the device everywhere with me. It's gone on camping trips, holidays, vacations, even Iceland. It was really useful for when I wanted to travel. I wanted to be able to visit friends and family and really be able to live my life. Those quotes are from SoberLink users who have found peace of mind while enjoying vacations, even in early alcohol recovery, when traveling can feel scary. Maybe you're nervous about going away from your support network, or your loved ones are concerned about a possible relapse. That's where SoberLink comes in. Here's how SoberLink helps keep you accountable. You'll test at scheduled times each day, 2 to 3 times a day. Facial recognition confirms your identity. Tamper sensors detect any attempts to cheat the system. And instant, easy-to-read results are sent directly to your loved ones, giving them peace of mind while you enjoy your time away. SoberLink isn't just about proving you're sober. It's about building confidence in your recovery, even when you're miles away. SoberLink, proof of sobriety at your fingertips wherever life takes you. Visit Soberlink.com/recover to sign up and receive $50 off your device. And I want to give a huge shout out to SoberLink for continuing here and there to sponsor the podcast and offer this incredible opportunity for so many people. Thank you so much, SoberLink. Now let's get to the episode. Right before we jump into this episode, I want to share this quick story about the Chinese bamboo tree. Have you heard of it before? Let me share this with you. The story of the Chinese bamboo tree is often used as a metaphor for patience, persistence, and faith, highlighting the importance of long-term dedication before seeing significant results. Here's how the story goes. The growth process of the Chinese bamboo tree. After planting the seed of a Chinese bamboo tree, nothing seems to happen for the first few years. In fact, for 5 years, you see no visible signs of growth above the soil. Throughout this time, however, the bamboo seed requires daily watering and care. Without the consistent attention, the seed would not survive and would never grow. Then, seamlessly all at once, in the 5th year, the bamboo tree shoots up, growing as much as 90 feet in just 6 weeks. The key lessons from the story: patience and faith. During those first 5 years, even though there's no visible growth, something significant is happening beneath the surface. The roots are growing deep, establishing a strong foundation necessary to support the bamboo's eventual rapid growth. This is a reminder to stay patient and trust the process, even when progress can't be seen. Consistency and effort. The tree requires constant nurturing, even when there's no immediate reward. This highlights the importance of consistent effort, discipline, and perseverance, as success may take time and often comes after sustained, unseen work. Exponential growth. The bamboo's sudden dramatic growth after years of dormancy serves as a metaphor for success or achievement. Sometimes progress appears slow and non-existent, but with constant effort, breakthroughs can happen quickly and dramatically. Foundation building. Just like the bamboo tree's roots spreading out during those first 5 years, the The story teaches us that building a solid foundation is crucial for long-term growth and success. The Chinese bamboo tree story is often used to inspire people in various walks of life, from personal growth to business ventures, and in this case, sobriety, showing that success often requires time, persistence, and unseen effort. I shared it with the Sober Motivation community the other day, and I thought it was well received. I always love that story because I feel like in sobriety and so many other areas of our life, we can feel like we're doing all the work and we're just not seeing or feeling the progress. But it doesn't mean that we're not making progress. It could be a lot closer than we think. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Today we've got Chad with us. Chad, how are you?
Doing great. How you feeling?
I'm all right, man. Thank you for asking. Thank you for being willing to jump on here and share your story with all of us.
No, thank you. I appreciate you having me on and everything you do.
Thank you. So what was it like for you growing up?
I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Nothing crazy going on. Long Island, New York. Good parents, 2 older brothers. I'm always like competing with them, trying to keep up because I was the youngest. And yeah, parents divorced, but dad was always around. But nothing that like really stuck out and like caused me, to go towards addiction or anything, or at least that stands out in my eyes.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that too. Yeah, 2 older brothers. Yeah, you kind of, make your way to the top in a sense, right? It's interesting too, though, right? Because a lot of times, and I talk about this a lot on the show, a lot of times I think people from the outside world that maybe don't have the close to home connection with addiction, they're thinking like something must have happened in the beginning years, in those essential years as we grow up, something, big red flag or something must have happened to them. But it is very common on the show for parents to divorce in a sense, right? And the dynamics, it sounds like it was good dynamics for you. People share different stories. How old were you when that happened?
I was, honestly, I think it was before I could even really remember. So like 2 or 3. I'm sure my older brothers have a different experience of that. But for me, it was, I saw my dad in the weekends and, hung out with my mom during the week.
Yeah. So moving forward from that, what was school and everything like for you on those early years?
Yeah, I was always getting in trouble. I just couldn't sit still, not make people laugh, or just doing something crazy. I think part of it was I just wasn't fully interested in the things that they were teaching or offering. And then I eventually ended up dropping out of school. A few years later, I was like 16. But I had gotten left back twice. So school was just always like, I could never. At one point, my dad, I was a skateboarder, and he offered me a trip to California if I could pass. All I had to do was pass 65, just barely pass, and I failed.
Oh, man.
So it's like even, it was like a layup for me, basically, and I still just couldn't, something about school, I don't know if it's the, like following parameters, just like something about repetition or what's normal is just kind of boring to me, and it's hard for me to get excited about.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, man. I was never into the academics. I can relate to that, man. I was getting in trouble ever since I could remember, to get in school suspension, out of school suspension, as things progressed. So you get into skateboarding. I mean, that's a big part of your story, right? Is skateboarding and stuff. What does that look like, though? Are you still on Long Island then when you get into skateboarding?
Yeah, so I have trouble remembering the exact year, but I think I was about years old, and really good athlete, played basketball, baseball, I'm on all the teams, like one of the best players. And then once I found skateboarding, I just completely dropped all of those and just became dead focused on that. And to me, that just spoke to me way more, because there's no rules, no boundaries, no arena. Skate with anyone, skate with no one. It's just kind of like limitless, you make your own rules.
Yeah. I love that, man. When I think of skateboarding, I think back. I think they were called Sobes. You ever hear
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you had a couple pair of those, right?
I had one.
Yeah, they were expensive. They were expensive. I remember I don't know where you got yours, but I remember I got mine at Journeys.
Yeah, I think it was, some mall store. I can't remember exactly, but yeah. Yeah, they popped in for a couple of years and then disappeared.
Yeah. No, exactly. So you get into skateboarding, though, but I mean, this is from what it sounds like, just hearing a little bit of your story there, right? This checked a lot of boxes for you. And what I noticed, I was always on the outside of skateboarding. Like I had the board and tried to do that. It was never my thing. But what I noticed from a lot of my friends, say in high school and maybe in middle school, like the trend really picked up for me. I just turned 37, so that's maybe a picture into that. And I noticed that the skateboarding was one part of it, but it was also like the friendships and the culture that came along with skateboarding, which was people really seemed to be attracted to. Was that something that kind of brought you into it or kept you with the skateboarding thing, or no?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and I always loved the aspect of anyone can skate with anyone. Like, I would take out my 10-year-old little cousin to go skate with 35-year-old men, and we'd go to like Philadelphia on a skate trip. Like there was really no like, anyone fit in. If you had a skateboard, you were in.
Yeah, so true. Cool. So you dropped out of school. I mean, what's the response like from people around you, and what was that thought process like?
Yeah, my parents are generally kind of laid back. Like I had less rules than most of the kids around me. They're both kind of into Buddhism and yoga their whole lives, so definitely more on the more lenient side. They didn't want me to do it, but once I lock in, I'm just like a wrecking ball. There's no real stopping me. So I think they just were like, they said as much as they could, But at the end of the day, that's what I was gonna do.
Yeah. And how old were you when you did that?
I was about 16. It was my second time getting left back, and then I was like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what feelings were you going through, though?
I mean, I was almost excited to get out of there and, just explore different options. So the second I could pursue skateboarding more, maybe go to California, do this and that was all that was on my mind. So while I was in school, I was just leaving in the middle of the day, going on trips anyway. So it just made sense.
Yeah. So you do that. I mean, what do you start to do with your time then? At 16, to skateboard?
Well, luckily, the first thing I did was get my GED, because I knew I probably wouldn't do it later on. So I went in there and I convinced the teacher. I'm like, oh, I'm a skateboarder, I'm traveling. I really wasn't, but she helped me kind of do it really quickly. So it only took me a week or two. Got it done, and then that was it. So I just moved on after that.
Moved on to where do you move on to?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was a pretty aimless path. I knew I wanted to skateboard, but I never really had a goal or a set focus, and I also almost didn't even want money, so I didn't really have these driving forces. I just wanted to experience life. That was always paramount. Which, I mean, in our society doesn't usually pan out well when you just go on a 10-year run of just experiencing life and not maybe having a job or a career.
Yeah.
Or not thinking. I wasn't even thinking about skateboarding in that way at all.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. So when do you start drinking and stuff? Is that around this time too, or no?
A little bit after. So I'm about, I think 21 or so, 22. I start working at the local skate shop, meeting guys. There's parties and stuff like that. And I'm going, but I hadn't really drank my whole life. It was never really anything that was present. The real thing that, snapped me into that behavior was an injury. I tore my ACL and PCL in my left knee, and I was just torn in bed, nothing to do. So I would talk about skating, go to parties, hang out, that type of stuff. I healed up. I was so diligent about it, and then I think it was 9 months later, I was fully healed at the skate park, and a BMX kid crashed into me and tore my MCL on the same knee. So after all that healing, I was deflated, and that really I can't get another completely done, and that kind of segued me into more of the drinking lifestyle.
Yeah. Man, that all on the same knee too. Wow.
Same knee, yeah.
My goodness. So, what does it look like for you? Because people, when they start drinking, people share different stories. I mean, what was it like for you when you first got into it?
It was gradual. I still had the love for skateboarding, and I was young, so I was going out more. But it became a lot easier to, instead of facing the difficult challenges of like maybe getting sponsored or doing contests or just continuing to push yourself, it was much easier to just drink and talk about what you've done and hang out with people. And, so slowly over time kind of sank into that. And I have an obsessive tendency, just as a human. When I get locked into something, I'm all in. So I slowly became all in on just drinking and nothing matters, floating in infinity. What does this all matter for? That type of thinking.
Yeah.
And see, I almost laughed about how not serious I took life. So I just drink, whatever, I get in trouble, nothing matters, this and that,
Yeah. Just kind of going with the flow there in a sense. What does your home life look like through like your 20s here? Like, are you at your parents' place?
Since I was like, 16, even when I was in school, I was staying at people's houses. Even when I was in school, I'd be at someone's house for 6 months straight on school days, and then I lived in California for a bit, so I would just float around, help people with work, and they had an extra apartment downstairs, so I was just always kind of floating and taking odd jobs, learning things, but nothing really set,
Yeah. Gotcha.
Well, I guess mom's house was home base, if there was nowhere to stay, I'd end up there, but.
Yeah. And you went out to California for a bit too. Skating really is big in California, right?
Yeah. Well, when you're a kid from New York, that's like the mecca, especially before the internet was a thing. It was just like California. It's that's where all the pros live and all the videos and everything.
Yeah. Speaking of pros, though, I saw your thing there with Tony Hawk too.
Yeah, crazy. He was actually in the first video I ever watched as a kid, so it's cool, full circle to have met him, and
That is crazy. Does he still skate?
Still skating. He actually snapped his femur 2 years ago or so, and came back and is full skating again, which at that age is, that's mind blowing.
Yeah, I'll never forget, man, the Tony Hawk the video game.
Oh, yeah, of course. Everyone, especially our age, I'm 37 too, anyone from that time period remembers.
Yeah, I feel like that just put, I wasn't plugged into the lifestyle, the culture at all, but I feel like that really blew things up, for skateboarding, that game there. It was a great game, man.
Yeah, put skateboarding on the map for sure. Yeah.
And Tony Hawk. Cool, man. So you go through this, right? So you're kind of I'm just painting a picture here. You kind of just, wandering around in a sense, right? Just going here, doing that, doing the odd jobs. Skateboarding is really your thing. You're starting to drink a little bit, and I think a lot of people's stories share too. It's progressive, right? It doesn't start out as this, oh my goodness, right? I've got this is going to be a serious problem, but then we kind of, as we go through the stages, we realize, things pick up a little bit. Is that part of your story with it at all?
100%. It's sneaky, and even when it's gotten bad, a lot of the times, most times, we still don't even admit it or realize it. We're still it's not really a problem. I still go to work, it's fine. Or
Yeah.
It's pretty common. So for me, yeah, it definitely snuck up. And I was very functional, and I wasn't really harming anyone around me, too much, except for probably a byproduct, just maybe emotionally, or the things I would do here and there. But I lived a pretty solitary life, so I wasn't living with someone and destroying their life directly, or at least maybe I was just unaware of it. Yeah, but when I got the DWIs, that's when it hit me. So I got 2 DWIs, and then I was in $10,000 of debt, facing jail time. People are lending me money that they don't have, and I'm like, all right, I never cared about my own life, but now it's affecting other people. And that's when I started feeling bad and wanting to change.
Yeah. When was that? Whenabouts was that when you got them?
Well, I quit drinking about 8-9 years ago, so the last DWI was about 9 years ago. Yeah. And then before that, 3 years before that was the other one, which was why I was facing jail time, because 2 within a 3-year period in New York is almost a guaranteed, sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Even leading up to that, though, what did life look like for you, involving the drinking and stuff? Like, too, you kind of mentioned something there that kind of stood out to me about, I can't remember it exactly, but what I got from it was that you didn't really care about yourself and sort of what that looked like. How do you work through a place like that or kind of get to a place like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a lot of my mindset and the view of the world. One of my main goals, just being a human, was always thinking about, like, why we're here, the main mission, what's the point, so I would contemplate our place in, infinity on a little rock, and, like, how important is what I'm doing, and this and that. And, if you're drinking and that, it's very easy to not have a positive outlook, especially after the skateboarding thing fell through. So it's very easy to just take a darker turn with that. And then I was anyone's drinking buddy at any time. And I had no money, no nothing, but I would just be there to be the party, and people wanted someone to party with if they were out, So buy me drinks. I would drink the drinks off the bar. I would drive everyone's car home every night because I didn't care about my own. Like, I don't want you to get in trouble. I'll make sure we get home, And then slowly that led into, like, cocaine, and then doing that all the time. So that kind of just kept it boiling.
Yeah. It's like, too, if there's no maybe intervention externally, internally, wherever, if nothing's kind of standing in our way, it's easy to keep things going, right? And then it just kind of snowballs.
Yeah, and you look up and you're like, wait, what? How'd I get here?
Yes, man, I can relate to that. I had that thought so many times, and I always thought too. I always told myself, like, well, if this happened, of course I'm gonna straighten out. Of course, if that happens, yeah, of course, like I'm gonna. And I remember it's an interesting story. I remember for the first time I tried heroin. And I was this older guy. I worked with him in a restaurant, and he was kind of like trying to mentor me throughout this sort of process. And it was like a short conversation. I don't remember it word for word, but the idea of it was hey, it's really hard to turn back from this next step. So make your choice wisely. And it was really weird coming from the person I'm getting into all of this with, but it was almost like he had already been down that road personally and understood the struggle and was trapped in that cycle.
Right.
And it was just such an interesting time. I reflect back on. At the time, I didn't give it any thought, but it was almost like I had told myself, when I started out with drinking and I started out with doing cocaine and I started out with prescription pills, like, of course, but this was the red line. I would never cross over that. And then it's so interesting how we set those red lines and then we find ourselves up against them, and then we find ourselves on the other side sometimes. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes a ton of sense. And I mean, on the other end, when I've gotten out of drinking, things I thought I would never do, year 2, year 5, now they seem normal every day. I don't even think about them. So it does make sense, like you think something's impossible, and then you're slowly messing around with things in that neighborhood, and then 2 years go by and it doesn't seem that crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
You kind of soften things up around you. You have this, like, imaginary wall, and then you hang out near it enough and it disappears.
Yeah. That's an incredible way to put it. And, it's interesting too, right? Because a lot of us, we had that first drink. I didn't anyway. I wasn't educated on things, how it was. I grew up in the DARE program. You're 37 too, so you probably crossed through it at some point. And the messaging was just say no, right? Just say no to drugs, right? And at that time, I didn't categorize alcohol as a drug. Like, I had no idea that, they sold it at stores. Like, come on, the cops are coming in and talking to us about, quote unquote drugs. I was like, well, if I stay away from that, I just say no to that, I'll be good. But it wasn't that cut and dry. And the messaging that I feel I missed out on was, okay, I wasn't able to say no. And now I'm in this spot, and I was never really taught or shown how to ask for help. I just internalized all of it, internalized the struggle, and just never really was able to reach out for help. I was just like, I failed the test. No one understands. No one's going to understand. It was like that, thing moving forward.
Yeah. No, it's funny, we still consider alcohol not a drug today. It's pretty common to not even view it that way. And, it's the same thing. It's, as we were just saying, it softens you up over time. You know, so you're having the drinks and it loosens you up to certain things. And
yeah. So you get these 2 DWIs. You're $10,000 in debt, and you start to maybe realize that what I'm doing, my choices, my behaviors are starting to impact maybe those around me. It's kind of started to, in one way or another, seep into other areas of your life and other people's lives. I mean, how does that change how you're looking at where you're at in life?
Yeah, I was always taking this pride in maybe not being like everyone else, or messing up, you know, in life and doing things just in an untraditional way, or I don't know, maybe being different. I don't really know what it was, but there was like something, I think a lot of people do it, you just cling on to this certain kind of behavior. And after so much pain, I finally realized, like, that something's got to change. I got to get rid of that behavior, and I just snapped into just making better decisions. It was so simple almost, but I just realized I was leaning into this almost character, right? I don't know. And then once I stopped, life slowly got better. And it was always there. It was always easy, and I was just purposefully taking these difficult choices. And who knows where that comes from, you know? Maybe it's a lack of, like, self-love or appreciation, or who knows, but yeah, I did it.
Yeah. So, I mean, how does the sobriety thing come to mind, right? Because I've heard a lot of people here share on the show, you know, they got the DWIs, and it was just like kind of maybe carry on a couple days later, you know, different stories, right? So, I mean, what happened for you after that last one? I mean, is that when you really changed direction?
So I quit for a year. My first time was a year. Well, so this was before the second DWI. I got the first DWI. They gave me the mandated probation, going to classes and stuff like that. So I quit for a year. And I even, later on, I drank around going to the classes, you know. So if I had like a 3-day window, I would drink and then try to be clean for when I had to show up, you know. And then the second time around is when everything really stuck, and I went into it with, like, I want to do this, you know?
Yeah.
And then I remember just going to probation after the second DWI, and I had a different attitude. I was, like, excited to see people and meet them and this and that, and everyone in there's like, why am I here? This is unfair. I hate life, you know? And I'm just, like, excited to do well. Look, I have a clean test. I'm excited. And then they gave me more leeway because I was, like, life got easier because I wasn't making it more difficult myself.
Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense, right? The changes that come with it, right? Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I think like I saw this thing one time that at first alcohol might be a solution to problems, but then it becomes a main source of problems for us, right? And that's why I think eliminating it, we realize so many benefits.
Yeah, it's a mask. You have pain, and it's short-term pain, and you pour alcohol on it to avoid it, and then it boils, or any drug, and it boils over time and gets worse and worse and worse until it explodes. That's basically it. So you could either face it immediately and try to understand it with clear, open eyes, or, you know, just keep avoiding it, keep pouring something on it. Could be prescription medicine, could be anything, you know, but essentially that's how I view almost all the things we put in our body, as some sort of way to avoid pain, you know? Yeah.
That's great. So you got the 1 year and then you went back. So, I mean, how did things look like for you after, though? After your second thing of probation, you're really plugging into the classes. I mean, maybe learning a few things, right? You're like, how did things change for you there in the early days?
Yeah, I mean, so the classes were, you know, super early on. Maybe I took a little away, but really I never went to a meeting. I did it all completely solo, essentially. Nothing against meetings, it just wasn't like my thing. Like, you know, with the school thing, I just kind of always wanted to figure things out on my own.
Yeah.
To my own detriment, who knows, but it's funner. So, yeah, after I quit drinking the second time, I hadn't used social media at all. I was completely against it. I thought it was like lame. Everyone's taking these pictures and egotistical and posting. This is like early Facebook, MySpace, So I was just staying off of it. Wouldn't use a cell phone, completely unplugged, right? Just floating around doing my own thing. And then when I got sober, I was like, I'm just going to embrace this thing that I hated, right? And so I started a YouTube channel. I thought I'm going to share everything I learned through skateboarding, try to give back, and have a hobby to focus on instead of drinking, because like I needed something to fill that void.
Yeah. So you started a YouTube channel. You bring up MySpace there too. Now we're going back. So you started a YouTube channel to share. I mean, and what was your message to put out there to people?
I mean, so in the beginning, it was my whole life. All I've ever done was take from skateboarding. 20 years going to parties and contests and this and that, and enjoying it, and I've never really given back. And this was a thought I had from getting sober. I realized all I've ever done is taken. So I started throwing contests. I started trying to get skate parks built in my area, and I started putting out all the information I knew, just to try to help people and help skateboarding.
Yeah. And what was the response from your efforts?
Well, I thought I was actually doing the tutorials and stuff for kids, and it turned out my audience was like 30 to 50-year-olds, people getting into it later, always wanted to do it, or people like, me and you that are looking for a passion when they got sober later in life, So slowly I realized the audience, it was like people like me, and then I started talking more about the alcohol and time.
Yeah. Did it take you some time to work up to be comfortable with that?
Yeah, and I was completely unaware of it. I was just surviving. I was just trying to figure out my next way forward. I wasn't thinking I could help anyone get out of this. I'm not even out of it myself yet,
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. When you decided to give up drinking, did you share it with it? Did everybody know around you, or how did that look?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I would actually still hang out with my friends and go to the bar till 4 a.m. and drive them. So I would just still be hanging out, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of things, because it's just I'm going out and I'm standing for 6 hours, and we're basically talking about nothing. When you're sober and you're just sitting there, you're like, wow, this is insane. I'm just standing around, night after night. And I slowly started to fade away and see almost the emptiness of it. And so I guess a lot of people avoid that because it could be triggering. But for me, I don't know. I think once I locked into that I was going to be sober, I was just so, nothing can break me. Once I committed to it, I felt just so locked in, and now even more so in time, building up all these positive experiences. Now it's why would I ever give it up? You know what I mean? So I feel as time keeps going, it just becomes easier and easier.
Yeah, because of everything you're experiencing.
Yeah, it's all about momentum. Getting the ball rolling from stationary is much harder. And it's everything feels weird and uncomfortable. You're all these learning curves, getting new friends, new this, new that. It's tough, so after a year or two, it starts getting much easier,
Yeah. Well, that's scary, though, for people to hear sometimes, Chad. A year or two. But it is so true. It's true.
There's different learning curves. And you're right. Yeah, I jumped over, month 1, you'll feel great. You'll feel clear and energized, and month 3 or 6, this is just for me too, this isn't across the board for everyone, I want to be clear on that, but you start to realize I'm doing all these things and I don't really like them. I was just doing them because I wanted to be out with friends or because I was drinking. I don't like this stuff. I don't like going to baseball games. I'm just going to drink and hang out, and then when you're sober, you slowly find your own path, something that you're interested in, something you're excited about, filling that time that was used at night and sleeping in late, you fill it in with this podcast, something you're excited about,
Yeah. And that's so true, and I think that a lot of people too, share a story about drinking being tied so closely to their identity. A lot of people, the party guy or just the mommy wine culture in a sense, right? different than our stories, but you get in there and you make your connections, your friends, and I think when you step back from it, from the drinking culture, you start to realize how much your life revolved around alcohol and how much it maybe helped us. For me anyway, it helped me fit into these sometimes awkward situations, and I felt like the guard could come down and I had less anxiety and I wasn't so insecure about who I was or where I've been. And when you get out of that, you start to realize that, and then I think that that's really, like you mentioned there, probably 6 months to a year, that's kind of that sweet spot where we had that clarity and realized, like, this was a lot bigger than just drinking alcohol. Like, there was a lot more at play. And then also finding that, finding other stuff to do. I mean, what are we going to do, right? Like, a lot of extra time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point you bring up, too, about the uncomfortableness, like being out or social situations. I realized from drinking that I had to relearn how to be a person, essentially. Like, I had this idea of myself that I lived as a drinker, where I could make people laugh and I was funny and this and that. But I had to learn how to do that sober. You know what I mean? It's like a long learning curve. I had to learn how to go out and like be myself at a situation and not scratch that itch of uncomfortability with a drink and like sink into it, feel it. Why do I feel this way? Like, and it is a long but such an interesting journey. And if you go into it with open eyes, it's, you just keep learning about yourself, and it makes your life more full, I feel.
Oh my gosh, does it ever, man. It's deeper connections with others, it's deeper connections with ourselves, and whatever else is out there. That we, when I was drinking, I felt like I was connected, right? We're going out with our buddies, right? We're chasing girls, we're doing everything we do in our younger years, whatever, right? But I just realized too, like, my friends and I, that's all we had in common. Like, we didn't do anything else. We didn't go grab coffee on a Saturday. We didn't, and it was kind of like a grieving moment too, like early on in sobriety, to like grieve in a sense what was, and realize that I'm probably moving forward not going to have this many acquaintances anymore. Like, I'm not going to be going out on Friday night waiting for the phone call, going and plugging into this stuff. And it was really tough for me personally, man, because I had built up that identity as like that person, going out partying, all that type of stuff. It was like I was wrapped up in that. That gave me a purpose. That helped me feel worthy. And it was all kind of built on quicksand. And it was like learning in the early days and in the months and the years about like exactly what you said, man. I had to relearn how to live life. And one of the scariest things for me personally was being responsible. I was the guy living in overdraft and switching banks and not paying payments and paying rent late and, just being late here and doing this. And it was like, when I was drinking, I could just drink and be like, all right, whatever. But when I was sober, there was no running anymore.
Yeah, you see everything. It's right there. Yeah, there's no hiding from it.
Yeah. So moving forward, man, I mean, you sent me this note before that you set a Guinness World Record. I mean, are we close to that point in your story about talking about that at all?
Yeah, I mean, we're still, let's see, maybe 6 years from that. So I started the YouTube channel, and then I was just, all right, I'm $10,000 in debt. I'm like, just, my mind is set, I'm paying everyone back. That's my first goal. So I'm trying to get a job. At this point, 2 DWIs, I'm a felon, broken arm, girlfriend broke up with me. Like, it doesn't get worse from the situation I was at. I mean, it does, but it was a pretty bad situation, I dropped out of school. Like, who wants to hire this guy, Walking in with a broken arm. Like, but I'm trying to apply for anywhere I can. And I get a job at this skate-themed taco place as the lowest position in the back, just boxing tacos. And I just keep grinding my way up and making YouTube videos after work. So then I create the series where I learn a new trick every day for a month. So I'd get off of work, I'd race to the skate park, and I'd daily vlog every day. So that kind of was like the beginning of the momentum on my YouTube channel. And then I just kept doing these like crazy challenges on my channel. Just, I don't know, just kind of boredom, or I don't know.
Yeah, so with skateboarding, And then would you talk too, like during the videos, like put in your personal stuff you were going through and things?
Yeah, a little bit. I'd be like, oh, just got off of work, got like 2 hours left, sunlight. I would do little anecdotes here and there about being sober or coffee. I think I had no caffeine at the time. So nothing crazy though. And I talk about details of the trick, just anything, normal daily vlog. Completed that, and then I was like, how could I top that? I was like, I don't know, that's crazy. And then the year later, came up with the idea to learn a new trick in every state in America, 50 days in a row. So once that hit me, I'm like, is that possible? Can I drive to each state and like learn a new trick? Is there enough time in the day? So I became obsessed, like I usually do. Mapped it all out and booked a flight. I was like, all right, day 49, I could fly to Alaska. Day 50 to Hawaii. This could work. So just went for it. Had no money. Started the GoFundMe and just figured it out. Just like went for it and kind of caught on a little bit. Nothing crazy. And people donated and helped me, have enough money to do it. Yeah. Another crazy experience. It's like we were saying before, you just like these levels, where something doesn't seem possible, and then once you break that, the next one, the closer you get to it and hang around it, you're like, oh, I don't know, it's just become second nature at some point.
Yeah. Just like I could do that. So you ended up finishing that challenge. You did a different trick in all
50 states, 50 days in a row, wild daily vlogging and uploading the whole time, completely solo.
Wow. Okay, I was gonna ask that too. Was there?
Yeah.
So you would fly to each state?
No, I drove to all 48, and then the last 2 I planned to fly to, and left my car in Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would drive like sometimes 8 hours, to another state, and then skate the skate parks, talk with the locals, put them in the video, and then like learn my new trick. And then edit it, upload it, do the hotel, like all that stuff every day.
That's cool. You know what's really cool about this story there too is what I'm just picturing here is when other people believe in your challenge, your mission to do it, and they support you with making it happen. That's one thing I think that feels really good.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, that actually, for me, some people think of that as pressure. Like, oh, I'm announcing I'm going to do this. I almost feel like it's the opposite. Like, it gives me the fuel and makes it easier that everyone's there and a part of this thing now. Now I can't bail. I got to do it.
Yeah, that accountability.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Wow, man, that's wild. That is wild. So where do you go after that, man? So you're working on this YouTube stuff. I mean, you're still working at your job as well?
Yeah, making tacos. So simultaneously, I'm working my way up there, becoming a server, which was always awkward for me. So I wanted to get better at YouTube. So my goal was to learn how to publicly speak, and like talk with people and, get better at that. So that kind of all helped. I kept moving up there. Now I run their food truck. Just keep doing that. And then I just kept doing the YouTube videos, which led to how am I going to top the 50 states challenge, which was skate across America. So yeah, that came to mind, and I just locked in. And I started researching, has anyone done this before? Like, is this possible? And that just consumed my life.
Yeah, okay, so you figured it out, but let us know, had anybody done this before?
So people have done it with other people where they were kind of doing like a relay. So like one guy would do 5 miles and they'd switch 5 miles, kind of like that. Or some people would skate, maybe stay somewhere for a week or 2 and stop, but no one like did it cleanly with the Guinness, the first legitimate crossing.
Wow.
But, people have like journeyed across with a skateboard.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so take us through that journey. I mean, what does that look like? Where do you start?
Okay, you just start, you start pushing. So you push like 5 miles, and then your body's killing you. Like 5-10 miles, you're like, this is crazy. And then you just keep doing it, you break in your body 10 miles, 20 miles. I'd go down to a nice long bike path, and just eventually I worked my way up to 50. And I was like, all right, if I could do 50 miles in a day, if I do that for 60 days, that's 2 months, 3,000 miles across America. So I did 50 like 1 or 2 more times, and I was like, all right, I think I should be able to make it across the country if I keep this pace. Then was the planning. It's non-stop researching. What routes am I going to run in the mountains? Like, can a skateboard even make it over a mountain? Which is funny, reflecting back on when I was drinking. I hated solving even the littlest problems. I get so frustrated by like little things or like credit card things. I would just avoid it and like throw everything away, or just like, I thought I was like Zen, like, oh, I'll let it go, like who cares, but it's really just was like avoidance, and then getting sober actually made it easier to keep facing these things and building that momentum in a positive way. So I don't think I'd be able to ever conceive doing something like this without the sober eyes,
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that too. Like, the sobriety is not, all of this journey for you, but I definitely, like, from hearing it, I would guess that it provided that space in your life, that confidence in your life, and sort of that curiosity. I think that's a strange thing that comes from sobriety is we gain confidence, which in turn makes us willing and believe that we could do other hard things,
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, I feel like it brought me back to being a kid. Like what I loved about life, like what excited me, It's like you slowly fade into like that adult life and you're drinking and it kind of gets washed out. And I don't know, there's just something beautiful about like, I feel like a little kid still. I'm still doing YouTube videos, still skateboarding. I got my job and I'm a little more like in a comfortable place, I guess. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah,
instead of, the insecure place I once was,
Yeah.
It was much, much different.
That's wild, man. And I think when I saw the Tony Hawk thing, maybe I'm wrong here, but you had the same set of wheels for the trip? Is that
true?
The
whole time. Yeah. It's my obsessive tendency coming through again. So I thought it was funny because I brought an extra set. I was gonna change them halfway, and they started like turning almost into like cheese. Like they were disintegrating. My viewers were like, "You're gonna kill yourself. You're not gonna finish it. The wheels are gonna explode." And I'm like laughing because I kind of know like they'll be all right. And even if they do, I'll just take a battle roll. I've been falling skating for 20 years, it's nothing. But everyone's losing their minds, like, please change them. So I thought it was kind of funny, so I was just leaving them,
Yeah.
And then 3/4 of the way, I'm like, I think I could actually just make it the whole way. That'd be so funny if one set could just make it. Like, to me, that was just interesting. I didn't care if it was slowing me down or not. Like, that just seemed funny and interesting. Then the last week, I kind of regretted it because they were like not even rolling on the axis anymore. They were just so chunky. But I'm so happy I did it because it became this like people were coming out on the road to just see the wheels. They were like their own character. And then, Tony Hawk ended up wanting to buy the board, and it became like this thing. So, in hindsight, it was reckless, but I don't know. To me, that's what made the whole trip and what makes life interesting.
Yeah. Where's the board at now?
He has a little his own private museum at his office or his house, and it's in there with like 10 other boards.
Wow.
Insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So where'd you sleep at? Like, did you sleep in the woods?
So my goal was to hit my 50-mile mark every single day. Then my next goal was I gotta find a hotel. So all right, let me look on my path. All right, there's a Super 8, 60 miles. That's where I'm staying the night. So that would be like my goal for the day, basically.
Gotcha.
And I just based everything on trying to stay there, and I'd charge up my phones, edit my vlog, ice my feet, put them in like a garbage can filled with ice, and then start over again the next day.
Yeah. And where did you start the trip, and where did you end the trip?
So I started in Venice Beach, and I ended in Virginia Beach.
Wow.
Yeah.
And people came out to see you, like at different stops, and
Yeah, and it ramped up as it went along. Like, it started picking up speed. And towards the end, there was like, I don't know, I have to count, but like 50 or 100 people were skating with me to the finish line. The police blocked off the bridge in Virginia Beach, and they were like following me and blocking traffic. It was surreal. And then at the finish line, the mayor was there. They set up like a banner, and I'm just like, wow. I just couldn't believe it. And I was replaying my whole life of kind of everyone telling me I'm crazy, skateboarding, dropping out of school, being aimless, you know what I mean? Like, all these things, like, just replaying in my head as I'm crossing the line, you know?
Yeah,
it was a pretty interesting experience.
Wow, man. Throughout that journey there, I mean, did you share, like, in the vlogs, too, about your struggle with alcohol? Was that part of it?
Yeah, 100%, yeah. I knew being out there, making daily vlogs. Well, first, I donated, the whole trip was built around this nonprofit called Natural High. It helps kids to find a passion to focus on rather than drugs and alcohol. So, like, basically what you were saying before, like DARE, but they didn't really give you, like, the solution necessarily, you know, or a solution. So Natural High is in all 50 classrooms in all 50 states, and they help kids find, like, you know, something they love to shift that attention to. So the whole trip was basically to fundraise for that and bring, you know, awareness to, you know, addiction and sobriety.
Yeah. Wow. What did you learn about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, being out there for so many hours, you can't not look inward. You know what I mean? You're just in the middle of the desert for 12 hours straight. Like, you're gonna have to look in, and that's what I love. You know, I love just, just learning about all the reasons why I do things. You know, all my tendencies, or understanding falling outs from the past that may have been my fault, that I held a grudge about or something, you know what I mean? Like, you'll just get hit with random thoughts from all over, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah, I can imagine, right? That just kind of do it on your own and everything. But I mean, finishing that, what have things looked like for you since then?
So since, I mean, on the outside, it looks exciting. You know, you got like Instagram and, like, you know, news stories and things like that. But basically, my life's still the same. I still work on the taco truck and still skate, make YouTube videos occasionally, and just carrying on, you know, just doing what I love and continuing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. And where are you at? Are you still in Long Island?
Still in Long Island, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Cool, actually, man. Just got married like 4 days ago.
What, dude?
Yeah.
Like everything. Okay, well, that's incredible, man.
Yeah, which is another thing that changed, because my whole life I was like, forget the system. I don't need the government involved. I don't need anyone to tell me that I need, like, you know, I'll love you for the end of time. I don't need, like, something to put a stamp on it, like a legal document, you know what I mean? And I was just, like, so against it, you know? And I think through being sober, I've learned to examine some of my old ideas or hang-ups, you know, reevaluate them, and also be more open to other people's situations. And if they're interested and they, like, you know, my wife really wants to have a wedding, it's like, sometimes it's good to make sacrifices, you know?
Yeah.
Almost always, it's good to make sacrifices.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it is. That's so exciting, dude. I mean, it seems like, too, throughout all of this, I mean, for you, it's a constant place of growth for you, right? Growing, learning, and even that trip of, like, looking within, and maybe a transition from where you kind of shared before about, you know, struggling in that sense, and then to a place now, because it can be really uncomfortable and really challenging to look within, right? Because none of us are perfect, and, you know, we've all taken wrong turns, and sometimes looking at that, and I think not only looking at that, but looking at our part in different situations. And I think it's such an incredible point that you bring up, that sobriety allows us that space to heal. And for me anyway, to say, you know what, like, I've been wrong in a lot of places in life, and I've hurt a lot of people, just made a lot of bad choices, but moving forward, I understand my role in those decisions, and I can change my behavior moving forward to, not live like that anymore, and make things a little bit different on this side, man. And it sounds like, it's something that you've went through as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I'm still going through it, still learning. It's a never-ending learning curve, and I feel like all these challenges I set for myself, and even the sobriety, what it does is, if you face difficult situations often, all other situations kind of pale in comparison to it. So if you're continuing to push your limits and just keep growing, it almost makes all the problems underneath that, like, you're almost not even acknowledging them anymore, because they've gotten easier in comparison. It's like lifting weights,
Yeah.
Like after you get to you build up to 300, 50-pound weight doesn't seem as hard anymore.
Yeah, where you started out on the journey, whether weightlifting or sobriety, it's like, at the time it can seem like it overbearing, right? Like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get through this? But you're right, man. As you knock down those walls, it's like it's not as difficult moving forward.
Yeah, and you gotta have trust. Well, that's like, the way I viewed the world and that nihilistic mindset, I didn't even think it was possible to be where I'm at today, or to even have this positive view of the world. I just trusted that those actions would eventually pay off. So you might not see it immediately, in the first couple weeks or this or that, but that's the hardest part, is in that space before you get sober. It feels like hopeless. It's so far away. Oh, why am I going to do this? It takes a year, 2 years. But it takes some time to build, but I've found it's always worth it. For anyone I've met who's done it, you never hear of someone that's regretted it. What's the worst? You could always just try it and then reevaluate,
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I've never heard anybody who's like, dang it, I wish I never, the only thing you kind of do hear sometimes, and I don't know if it's a regret from people, but a lot of people share that, I wish I did it a little bit sooner, and I think too, man, what an incredible point to hit home as we wrap up here. It's like that blind trust, that things are going to work out and that we're on the right path, whether it feels like we are or we aren't at the time. It's another thing I love is people float around in sobriety a lot. This too shall pass.
Yeah.
We're going to get through it. Feelings come and go. They don't last forever, right? So, if we're having a tough day, we get a good rest. I find in my own life, if I'm having a really tough day and I get a good rest, I feel energized and I can really start to tackle stuff. And I don't need to just run and escape anymore. It's okay if I'm struggling. It's okay if everything's not working out. I'm just going to stay in the game and things will turn around.
100%, yeah. And as time goes by, for me with the sobriety, that just it kind of shrinks and shrinks. The problems become much easier,
Yeah. I'm thinking, Chad, before we sign off here, man, if somebody's struggling to get started with their sobriety, or they're in it too, right? They're in that first year, and maybe it's not making a whole lot of sense, right? Is this worth it? Is it worth sort of the struggle of what I'm going through? What would be your message to them?
Look inward and figure out what you love to do more than anything in this life. What you're interested in, or it could be who you love, or whatever it is. That to me is the real disconnect. So if you're sober and it's not quite clicking, or you don't have the motivation to jump into sobriety, fill it with something equally as exciting. And for me, that was I'm going to do YouTube, this thing I've always hated. I actually used it to call my own bluff. I was all about nothingness and nothing mattered. So when I got sober, I said, all right, so if nothing matters, do the thing you hate the most. Go do YouTube. And it ended up being where the answer was for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great, man.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, do kind of what you're most afraid of, too, in a sense, right?
Yep. Yeah. 100%. Do what you're afraid of. There could be an answer there. If something sticks out to you like that, there's usually something underneath.
Yeah. I love that, too. I mean, look within, right? I think, too, it's good to have support. It's good to have community. It's good to be connected with other people. But I think we have more answers than we realize, like within ourselves. You know, I think we have to do a little bit of digging to get there, but I think that we have a lot of those answers that we can figure out too about who we want to be and how we want to show up in this world. And I use a lot of those things when I find myself in a tough spot, like who do I want to be at the end of the day? And, you know, I've got 3 kids, and I saw this quote thing the other day that, you know, one day your kids are going to figure you out. You know, and that's so true. That's so true. And it's up to me about who, you know, when they figure that out, what do I want them to see? And how do I want to live? And I think it's really, since becoming a father, it's become something that is important, right? To set the best example, right? Like, dude, being a father, I'm far from perfect, man. I'm learning every day, right, with all of this stuff. But just to try my best, I think is, it kind of shifts over into sobriety and just being a role model and, you know, just showing up in the world to give back.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, your kids, like, yeah, they'll figure you out, but also they're going to inherit all your behavior subconsciously. They're around you all the time. That's where their world is formed. It's from your behavior. So not just like they're going to figure you out, they're going to also pick up your mannerisms and your behavior. So the better you are, the better they will be inherently, you know?
Yeah, beautiful, man. Anything else, Chad, before we sign off that you want to mention?
Yeah, I have the Skate Across America photo book coming out in a couple of months. So anyone that pre-orders that, I'm going to be doing a giveaway for, it's like a photo print, giving away 10 of those. But yeah, other than that, that's it. I really appreciate you having me on. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, of course. So wait, this is pictures of your trip?
So it's basically, so I got Tony Hawk, he wrote the foreword, which I still can't believe, you know. And then I kind of go through each day and talk about a couple of paragraphs, my emotions, challenges I faced, people I met. So I include all unseen iPhone photos, and professional photographers met up with me also. So that's scattered throughout the book as well.
Wow. Okay, yeah. And one last question, and then you're out of here. I'll let you off the hook. Did you write these paragraphs like every night at the end of the day, or is this something you went back and reflected on?
I had no time during it because I was doing the daily vlog and like 10, 12 hours a day. So I wrote all this in reflection. But having all the vlogs and the photos helped. I looked at it and I could just recall like all the emotions pretty quickly, you know?
Yeah. Wow, dude, that's incredible, man. Well, thank you, Chad, so much for hanging out today.
No, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, there it is, everyone. Another incredible episode. Thank you, Chad, for jumping on the podcast and sharing your story with us. Incredible stuff. I'll drop Chad's contact information down in the show notes below, as well as the link to join us on the Sober Motivation community. I hope to see a few more of you there. Until next